At dawn on the outskirts of Envigado, Colombia, a quiet industrial zone sent out a pulse, small, rhythmic, and powerful enough to trip alerts thousands of miles away. On the screens of U.S. naval intelligence, the signal didn't look like anything that should come from a warehouse labeled Camión Reparaciones Hernández, a so-called truck repair shop. Instead, it looked like something you would expect from a small factory running at full throttle. And that single anomaly, barely a blip, triggered one of the most sophisticated joint operations in modern history. Within minutes, that blip traveled through a chain of eyes and ears. The Naval Intelligence Fusion Center in Key West, the FBI field office in Bogota, and finally, the Colombian National Police. For months, analysts had been piecing together strange activity. Cargo moving without manifests, ghost companies funneling money offshore, encrypted radio bursts near the Venezuelan border. None of it made sense alone, but the pulse of stolen electricity suddenly connected every loose thread into one coherent picture. Envigado wasn't new territory in the story of global crime. It was once the throne of Pablo Escobar's empire, a symbol of chaos and power. But what investigators were about to uncover had evolved far beyond the narco mythology of the past. This cartel didn't rely on jungle labs or improvised chemistry. They had built something closer to a corporation. An industrial, engineered, multinational network designed to move billions without ever being seen. As data flowed across the screens, analysts knew they weren't dealing with small-time traffickers. Intelligence pointed to the Clan del Golfo, backed quietly by Venezuela's Tren de Aragua, a partnership worth billions. If the building really was what the signal suggested, then the quiet warehouse was the doorway into a global industrial syndicate. And the question that weighed on every analyst was simple. Could Washington and Bogota stop a machine this large before another shipment reached the United States? By midnight, hesitation was gone. Pictures from high-resolution satellites, thermal sensors, and drones painted a clear image. The repair shop was an industrial complex disguised under cracked concrete and fading paint. From above, the heat signature didn't match anything resembling mechanical work. Instead, it radiated the steady temperature cycles of continuous chemical reactions. 5 stainless steel reactors sat beneath the floor, each roughly the size of a compact car, each connected to pumps, condensers, digital control panels, and a web of insulated piping. This wasn't artisanal production. This was manufacturing. Each reactor was capable of producing over 2,000 pounds of crystal meth every week. Combined, they could output a staggering annual volume worth more than the GDP of some countries. Laboratory tests would later show purity levels of 99.3%, something nearly unheard of on the street. The cartel had crossed the line between traditional trafficking and industrialized narcotics manufacturing, a transformation that few law enforcement agencies in the world were prepared to counter. While chemical experts analyzed the lab's capabilities, another battle was unfolding deep inside the financial networks that kept the operation alive. Cyber units traced money flows through dozens of shell companies registered in Panama, Curacao, and Hong Kong. Millions of dollars moved in sanitized entries like logistics revenue, equipment maintenance, and industrial procurement. On paper, it looked like a multinational logistics company. In reality, it was an empire built on deception. For 3 months, financial crime specialists and cyber analysts had been working like archaeologists, brushing away layers of deliberate obfuscation to reveal patterns too precise to be coincidence. Every offshore account, every encrypted transaction, every shell company existed for a reason. And now, that financial blueprint matched the physical signatures seen in Envigado. Still, nothing prepared investigators for the logistical network operating beneath Colombia's nose. Ghost trucks moved under cloned plates. GPS units went dark near dead zones. Warehouses without addresses appeared on sporadic CCTV footage. And power spikes across the manufacturing belt lined up perfectly with processing cycles inside the clandestine lab. Drones captured tampered electric meters digitally reprogrammed to hide massive power consumption. Exhaust fumes, normally vented through tall chimneys, were instead rerouted into municipal sewer and river systems through fake ventilation ducts fashioned to look like truck exhaust. A hidden tunnel extended from the rear wall straight into an abandoned river dock, built for nighttime transfers onto speedboats. Between October 8th and 10th, the noose tightened. Satellites tracked a convoy of box trucks leaving Envigado and heading north toward a secluded port outside Barranquilla. One of the trucks carried a GPS tag secretly planted weeks earlier by Colombian agents. As soon as it blinked near the shoreline, the team knew the cargo, approximately 4,000 pounds of methamphetamine base, was being staged for maritime export. The numbers stunned even the most experienced analysts. When the purity, production rate, and distribution patterns were analyzed, the estimated annual revenue approached $5 billion. Not pesos, dollars. This meant the cartel wasn't merely smuggling drugs, it was running an international industrial enterprise. Inside the Joint Command Center, urgency overwhelmed the usual methodical pace of intelligence operations. Screens lit up with overlapping feeds, drones circling the port, intercepted radio traffic from Venezuela, and financial updates showing large transfers hitting offshore accounts. It was a symphony of information converging into a single moment of decision. But the magnitude of the lab created a nightmare scenario. Breaching a site full of volatile chemicals, reactors, and solvents could ignite an inferno. A bullet in the wrong pipe, an explosion in the wrong chamber, and the entire structure could go up in a toxic fireball strong enough to destroy everything inside, including any hostages. Still, time was running out. If the task force failed, 2 tons of mere pharmaceutical methamphetamine would hit the global market, fueling overdose waves and strengthening a cartel transforming into a multinational shadow state. On October 11th, the operation moved from screens to boots on the ground. At 1:30 a.m., 3 units closed in. FBI hostage rescue team positioned west. Colombian special operations advancing from the south. U.S. Navy observers coordinating real-time intelligence. The breach charge detonated at 1:31 a.m. Steel doors peeled open. Operators surged forward under night vision glow. The interior of the warehouse erupted into chaos. Chemical drums, machinery, panicked workers, masked gunmen. Gunfire ricocheted off metal as teams moved in coordinated formation. In minutes, over 1,400 rounds were exchanged. What had begun as a precision strike devolved into a close-quarters firefight in rooms barely larger than walk-in closets. Then came the moment everyone feared. A stray bullet struck one of the reactors beneath the floor. The pressure vessel ruptured. Vapors ignited. Flames tore across channels meant only for controlled reactions. Plastic piping melted. Solvents detonated like improvised explosives. The interior turned into a chemical inferno. Operators withdrew to avoid catastrophic exposure. Hazmat units moved in with rebreathers and thermal gear. Fire suppression systems, intentionally sabotaged, offered almost no resistance. Everything inside the lab was burning. But despite the fire, the mission succeeded. 15 cartel gunmen were taken down. 5 enslaved workers were rescued, chained in a rear vault, and over 6,000 pounds of pharmaceutical-grade methamphetamine were seized. The blaze couldn't hide the scale of the empire. Investigators uncovered industrial-grade distillation columns, digital control panels, encrypted communication devices, and financial ledgers tying the lab to a network of offshore accounts. Every clue pointed to something bigger than any government had expected. But the night was far from over. At 3 a.m., encrypted chatter intercepted during the raid suddenly aligned with GPS data from a confiscated satellite phone. The coordinates pointed to 2 freighters, San Miguel and Corazon del Sur, idling 35 nautical miles off the Venezuelan coast. They weren't waiting for fishing seasons or cargo routes. They were waiting for speedboats. From the sky, an MH-60R Seahawk sliced through the darkness. Its sensors picked up 3 heat signatures moving in formation. Fast boats headed toward the freighters. At 3:19 a.m., tracer rounds burst upward from the boats. The cartel fired first. The Seahawk banked hard, returning fire with a .50 caliber GAU-21. One boat erupted in flames. The remaining 2 split formation. Meanwhile, 2 RHIB teams, rigid hull inflatables, raced across the surf toward the San Miguel. The cartel fighters on deck fought with military discipline. Grenade launchers, precision rifle fire, defensive positioning behind reinforced cargo containers. But under the Seahawk's suppressive fire, the boarding teams hooked onto the hull. The close-quarters combat lasted less than 8 minutes. 17 cartel fighters were captured alive. Inside the freighters, agents found 2,100 pounds of meth in sealed drums, 1,900 pounds hidden in floating tanks, coded manifests, encrypted hard drives, false bulkheads with concealed storage. This wasn't smuggling. It was maritime logistics at industrial scale. By sunrise, divers had recovered more floating containers still sealed and buoyant. Chemical tests confirmed they were filled with methamphetamine intended for North American markets. Within hours, the freighters were secured and towed toward a naval pier in Curaçao. Intelligence teams immediately began extracting data from onboard electronics. The real revelations were just beginning. At Quantico, digital forensics teams uncovered 2.4 terabytes of encrypted data. The files exposed 51 offshore accounts, 7 shell corporations, and a global routing network channeling billions in revenue. The Envigado Superlab was only one of 4. The syndicate wasn't a cartel. It was a multinational conglomerate. Their plan? Export up to 20,000 pounds of meth every quarter. Over 100 million doses. Annual revenue? $5 billion. Silent Harbor wasn't just a raid. It was a revelation of a new kind of enemy. Not soldiers, not gangsters, but executives of a criminal corporation disguised as a logistics empire. By the end of the operation, 4 superlabs destroyed, over 10,000 pounds seized, dozens of operatives captured, entire maritime pipeline exposed. Yet one truth lingered. The war had changed. Cartels no longer rely on violence alone. They rely on encryption, offshore finance, industrial engineering, and global shipping lanes. Silent Harbor wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a new battlefield, one where criminal empires operate with the precision of tech companies. And if a $5 billion narcotics conglomerate could grow this quietly, what else is already out there, hidden behind the mask of legitimate industry?